gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today we're hosting another live Q&A. So, before I get started, I just wanted to emphasise or to reiterate to those that might not have come across these lives before, the purpose of these lives is for me to get to know some of the people that follow us. They might be Stomarian citizens, they might be supporters of Stomaria, they might be the leaders or the members of other communities or other nations or other aspirant projects of some description. But it's also a good opportunity for me to go through what's been going on within Stomaria and the wider Empire as a whole, to give a kind of a snapshot. We do have obviously break down these topics in more detail in dedicated videos, which we'll have coming out periodically, as always. But this is just an opportunity for us to get together and have a chat. And I do actually have a list of things that I want to cover in this particular live Q&A. So we will get started in a moment, but I can see we have had a few people in the chat already, so let me just go through that quickly. We have the United, oh dear, here we go. See, this is going to be one of my pet peeves, and has been since day one. I've done the January, February, March, and now this is April live Q&A. And one of the most consistent problems I have with it is people commenting in the live chat with the most unpronounceable names imaginable. And this is a very good example. So, first person to comment, the United Islamic Kaiserist nation, I'm going to say? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going to call you Islamic nation because I just don't know how to pronounce it. And I think maybe that I should have, maybe I already did, but I should have said something along the lines of when we have our How to Start a Nation series about coming up with a name, about trying to keep it very simple. I don't think I actually said as much in the actual video that I have on that playlist, but it is, I think, so important. Like, some people say Stomaria, some people say Stomaria, but you know, you can get the idea of how to pronounce the name, whereas this, I just don't even know where to start. So anyway, the Islamic Nation says, hello, I am the leader of Islamic Nation. All right, fine, hello. The Republic of Ladonia, again, that's all right, that's easy, I can pronounce that. Tell me if I pronounced it wrong, but at least I can have a good stab in the dark of that one. They say hello. The Republic of Westarctica, they say hey there. Muslim Boy says hi. Outlaw Tanker. New Midgard here, how's it going? Doing very well, thank you. Just having another live Q&A, and we're just going to be discussing a few things about Stomaria and the Empire, as well as answering a few questions as and when they come in between all the jargon that I have written down here. We have Dante Caton. Hello, I'm Banitha. Again, I have to excuse my pronunciations, but please give me some more information on that. Oh. Or the Federal Dual Catonist Republic of the Kingdom of Banitha. Again, just let me know, pronounce it, speak slowly for me so I can fully get to grips with the pronunciations of these names of yours, and I promise I will try to get them right. Muslim Boy says, this is my other account, my actual Micronation's name is Redland. Well, at least that's easy to pronounce, I suppose. Alright, fantastic. So we're just caught up there, just a few people jumping in the chat, and I will answer any questions and queries that any of you guys might have. But first, I just want to quickly give a brief synopsis, if you like, of what's been going on in the last month or so, as well as plans for the near future. So, first off, the progress at Southwood, which is a Stomarian province, has been extraordinary at the moment. So we have the rhubarb planted there, we have some, what do we have, nearly, I think it's 74 plants at the moment, 74 rhubarb plants, crowns, in these raised beds, and they're flourishing, they're doing extremely well, and I'm very confident of getting some quite massive returns going forward, so very excited about that one. In terms of the rest of the woodland, we have started to seed microclover across the entirety of the woodland virtually, because we want to basically turn the mud, which is just a constant problem in the woodland in terms of you know, when you have people coming over and there's enough traffic, it sort of churns it up and it just makes it an unpleasant experience. And obviously we are in the woods. There's only so much you can do really to mitigate that. But a good way for us to do that is to plant these clovers to spread the seeds and let them grow. And they have done really, really well so far. King Raoul of Wayward has sent me a few photos because he's obviously in the area, and he sends me sort of updated photos and all the rest of it of all of the clover that's all coming up. And clover is a fantastic option for us. They have tried grass in the past. That's say Wayward has tried grass seed and all the rest of it in the past, but nothing has taken there on that front. But clover, in any case, is far superior because clover is obviously something that bees will enjoy. It's a flowering plant. It's apparently a lot hardier, a lot more drought resistant. So I don't know about that because we're obviously in the woods. There's going to be some variables because obviously it would prefer full sunlight and it's not going to get that in the woodland obviously, so there's going to be that factor. But anything that we can do to mitigate the mud issue while also enhancing the pollination aspect of the area is good, because we did attempt to do bees at Southwood and Wayward South, the adjoining territory, but we never really got around to actually doing that, so we actually started other projects there in the meantime. But if we can get pollination thriving there, I'd love to see more bees and more wildlife come into the woodlands, and this would be a good way to start that process, I think. So clover, again, going very well at the moment, and this is all going to be in preparation for later events in the next few months, not least the Imperial Summit. Now, I haven't actually talked about the Imperial Summit very much this year because we're still ironing out the details of what exactly has happened with that. And even now, we're still yet to firm up the date, but I can confirm, if nothing else, that the Imperial Summit will be happening this year, and it will be happening in June. I will send out details over the next few weeks once I firm up what exactly is going to happen, but I think it'll be largely replicating what we did last year in June 2023, which was, the largest event that Stomaria has ever hosted, and it was a very enjoyable experience. And we had a lot of the equipment and the sort of infrastructure that we had from last year, and it wouldn't take much in the way of an expense to actually host another event. It will largely be down to food and straw bales, I think, is basically all we require. Straw bales being used for archery and air rifle competitions and that sort of thing, which was quite a enjoyable experience and a big feature of the actual event last year. But I think it will just mainly be food, and that will just depend on the number of people attending. We're not going to push this too hard because there was a question mark as to whether or not we were even going to have an Imperial Summit this year. But it sort of transpired that that is something that we are going to do, because ideally we did want it to be an annual thing, and we were going to pull it back a little bit this year only because we want to focus on building up enough revenue in order to push ourselves further and faster in the next few years ahead. But my OCD simply won't tolerate the Imperial Summit 2023, nothing for 24, and then 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 all having Imperial Summits held in those years. I can't stomach the anomaly, so we are going to have the Imperial Summit regardless of how successful it's going to be. Now, as a part of this, we are going to be, over the next few months, clearing out the woodland and really developing it further. I mean, if you look at back some of the footage of the Imperial Summit from last year, the woodland has changed so much since then. We've taken down a lot of old chicken pens, we've established new beds, we've established new vegetables, new raised beds for the plants, but also flower beds. We've obviously planted the clover, we've landscaped the land, we've really changed the woodland in its entirety in some form or another. But there is still a lot of work to be done in order to maximise the usage of the land, as well as conserving particular parts of it for ecological purposes, which is where the clover comes into play a little bit, because any space that we can just walk on and we're not using, we can actually use to help with the bees and the wildlife and all the rest of it. So we're trying to do both at the same time. We're trying to make it cleaner, more efficient, more productive, but also a big heavy emphasis on the ecology, on the environment. And trying to do all of this at the same time is both exciting, but also quite challenging. And just to lead on from that a little bit, we recently acquired some solar panels. Now, we have experimented with solar power in the past, in the sense we had just a little portable 28 watt solar panel, which is just a little mobile thing, little portable thing, which we use to charge the battery, and then the battery could be used to charge small devices, phones and things. Again, it was just very low key. We just wanted to dip our toes in the water and start that process. We then had a slightly larger solar panel on the roof of the shed that we have at Southwood. That was there for a while. It did generate power, but we never actually utilised it for anything major. But what we are going to be doing, because I have acquired them recently, is two 120 watt solar panels. Quite massive things. I mean, they're, I think, a metre by 60 centimetres, give or take. So they're quite large, and there's two of them. I've got the power charger and all the rest of it, and we're going to actually install it, all being well, on the roof of the actual shed. Initially, I did want to set them up independent of the shed, so I could sort of manoeuvre them and angle them to catch as much sun as possible, because being in the woods is obviously going to be a limitation in terms of how much sun we can get at the best of times, and on the shed is not the prime location. However, I did want somewhere, a base of operations, if you like, somewhere dry to install the power charger and all the rest of it, so we could charge phones and devices and everything. If I have them out and about, we're going to have to create like some sort of box or cover for the power charger and all the devices that go into it. It's just really not worth the hassle. So we are just going to put them on the roof. And so when it comes to solar power, when it comes to water collection, when it comes to growing our own food and all the rest of it, we are making strides. We are pushing forward with this. Progress is being made on every front. Everything that we set out to do is being done. And that's very exciting. So that's something else I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks. It's the 19th and the 20th of April. So in a few weeks' time, I'm going to be taking a couple of days off, and I'm going to the woodlands to assist King Raoul and other Waywoodians that may be present at the time in really developing Southwood and Wayward South in a more major way. We're going to hit the ground running. We're going to get everything ready for the coming events later this year. Not just the Imperial Summit, but also Wayward hosts events typically at the end of the month, or for special occasions. And it'll just be nice to have everything streamlined, clean, tidy, and something to show off, because you can physically see the progress being made there. And it's all really very exciting to see. So on that front, as I say, with the Imperial Summit, keep an eye out for some of the dates, because we are going to be hosting the Imperial Summit in June this year. So what have I covered here? Clear out Imperial Summit. When it comes to what can we discuss first? Just trying to think the most logical order here. I suppose just to touch on this slightly, just change lanes a little bit. When it comes to citizens, I have noticed over the last few days in particular an uptick in the number of people becoming citizens of Stomaria, which is fantastic to see. Now, I get asked this question quite a lot. So I just want to reiterate, if you want to become a citizen of Stomaria, all you have to do is hop into our website, or in the link of the description of this video or any of our videos on YouTube, and you just go to our PayPal account. You contribute as much or as little as you want. It could be £1 a month, £1 a year, £1 as a one-off payment, or whatever else. And then from that point, you will be considered a Stomarian citizen, in the sense that you'll have your name, we should have your address, your email address, and all the rest of it. So we'll have all the information, necessary information we need to process an application process. And it sort of feeds into that idea that we are a nation of voluntary taxation. So if you only want to contribute the bare minimum, and that's all you ever want to contribute, then that's fine. We will accept that as, you know, the amount that you want to contribute, the amount that you believe that Stomaria is worth supporting on that front. But we do insist on some kind of contribution initially. I don't even know what the minimum is you can do through PayPal. It might be £1, it might be less, I honestly don't know. But the point is that to become a citizen, that's all you need to do. If you want to take things further, if you want to get more heavily involved in the rest of it, that's fine, but we will have a track record of how much support you have given in the past. So again, just to re-emphasize, and I'll make a video about this in its entirety, something separate to promote out there and make it clear that this is the way to do it. If you want to become a citizen, you just have to go onto our website and follow the instructions. It doesn't require any input from me. It doesn't require anything complicated. There's no form to fill in or whatever else. It's literally a single payment of like £1 or less, or more if you want to. And I would like to thank a lot of these Stomarian citizens and supporters that have joined, especially in recent months. because their contributions have been not only very regular but incredibly generous, and it has, I think, helped to push Stomaria towards its own financial targets, in the sense that this year and next year I'm hoping to have many more citizens and supporters assist Stomaria financially in the most direct way possible, in order to push us that much further along. And I think we are going to blow out of the water past revenue streams, in the sense that we might have raised, how many hundreds or thousands of pounds in the past. I think that's going to be small potatoes compared to what we're going to be doing in the near future. So again, if you want to join, that's how you do it. Don't have to, obviously, but I just get asked this question quite a lot, and that is the way to do it. So I am going to answer some of these questions, because I have got some coming through, or at least some conversations. Don't know if they're necessarily questions directed at me. Again, you'll have to forgive me, because the chat has a nasty tendency to jump, and so I have to keep scrolling back to find these. So Outlaw Tank said, on my deployment, I watched you a lot and helped me realise that what I was doing was cool for Micronation. I didn't know if he is. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't fall into the trap, as we did, in thinking that what we are doing is micronationalism. I mean, in the past, if you look back at a lot of our videos, we'll talk about micronationalism and Stomaria being a micronation and all that jazz. But you'll quickly find that the term micronation and its usage in the micronational community is just so warped that it really doesn't resemble anything to do with nation building. And that is how we define Stomaria, and have done for some time now, since I think, what was it, December 2022, so well over a year at this point. We define Stomaria as a nation building project, as a community. When you define something like Stomaria as a micronation, it lumps Stomaria in with some of the worst aspects of micronationalism. That might be declarations of war, or doxing, or predatory behaviour, or using bits of paper or cookie dough as currency, or effectively making a mockery of the whole process. And if they want to do that, obviously, that's fine. If they want to define themselves as a micronation and act like goofballs, leave them to it. I don't care. It's not any of my business, not any of my concern. Never has been, never will be. But what I will say is that we are not obliged ourselves to identify as a micronation if we think it's going to be detrimental to our own progress. And that is exactly why we abandoned the term micronation to define Stomaria, because a lot of people who might find Stomaria to be interesting and want to be involved in that, the minute they type in micronation and all of this jargon comes up about these neo-Nazi micronations, these communist micronations, these micronations declaring sanctions, embargoes, and getting into these little Twitter feed wars or whatever else, and all of this other quite embarrassing, cringeworthy content, and then associates that with Stomaria, people are less inclined to get involved, and have been less inclined to get involved. And since we abandoned that term and moved forward, we've attracted a lot more level-headed people, the adults in the room, if you like, people that have looked at the landscape of micronations and gone, well, this isn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a nation, a community, a society. I wanted to actually establish something genuine and generational, and that's just not what 95% or more of micronations are actually interested in. There's only a handful I can think of that would even closely resemble what we are doing, with a few others that may be engaging in worthy causes. It might be promoting human rights or environmentalism or whatever else, but that's got nothing to do with building a nation or a society in its own right. If you're promoting gay rights, or if you're looking to protect the penguins or whatever else, fine, good on you. But again, is it a nation? Do you have a nation based for that? Or is it just a case of using micronationalism as a way of promoting those causes, which again is fine, but in my opinion, it just doesn't have anything to do with nation building, which is what Stomaria is. Sorry, that was a long roundabout way. It wasn't even a question, but I just wanted to re-emphasize the point that you should really differentiate micronationalism and micronations from genuine nation-building projects, because more often than not, they are not the same thing. Jan Van Zura says, my micron name is Apsaria? So what is it today? Sorry, I'm just having a quick read of this. Sorry, when it comes to lives, I am hopeless when it comes to this sort of thing, because I do have long pauses, because I do like to try to catch up with other things that have been going on, not just on the live itself, but actually on other platforms, because I get messages and emails as I do these, and I just like to have them open just in case something important happens while I'm doing it, or questions get asked elsewhere, because I do tend to get questions from, it might be Discord messages, it might be Facebook messages, or whatever else, or it might even be an email someone sending us during the live, for the purpose of the live, because I don't want to comment in the chat, so I just want to catch up on that sort of thing as well. So again, you'll have to give me on that one. Dante Caton says, what's Stomaria's ideology? I think we have had a similar question asked before. Now, when it comes to Stomaria's ideology, we don't have a specific ideology, in the sense that we do obviously have ideological positions on a number of things. If you look at government, we're advocates of monarchianism, goodness me, more specifically absolute monarchianism. But if you look at our values and aspirations when it comes to private property, or freedom of speech, or freedom of association, we're quite libertarian on that front as well. But equally, when it comes to things like the ecology and environment, we're environmentalists at our core. We are concerned with the protection and enhancements of the natural world, and so trying to make sure that that is ingrained within what Stomaria is trying to do is very important to us. So we're environmentalists, we're libertarians, we're monarchists, we're, I'm not even sure what you would necessarily call it, but we're advocates for the utilisation of sound money. I'm sure there is a terminology for that, as opposed to fiat currency. So we have various values and aspirations which kind of tie in together and blend into each other. And in the wider world, these might not blend together very naturally. For example, we wouldn't necessarily have advocates of absolute monarchianism tie in very easily with libertarianism, because of what we are, because of the scale and what we are doing. They do blend together very well. And so the short answer is we don't have a singular driving ideology. We have many ideologies which we believe is necessary to be funneled into the establishment of a nation. And I think this is where people can get confused, because what we are doing isn't the same as politics, for instance. We're not a political party. We don't have a set of values and aspirations in the sense that we are left-wing or right-wing, or we are centre-right, or whatever else. I mean, if you had to put us somewhere on the political spectrum, if you absolutely had to, we'd probably be somewhere in the centre-right, sort of a moderate libertarian position. But we're not, I wouldn't necessarily put every Stomarian on that spectrum, because we're not, as I say, a political party. We're not an ideologically driven movement. We have a set of values and aspirations and objectives, and a lot of these are just based on what is practical for us. Absolute monarchism, this is going to kill me. Absolute monarchianism in the wider world is not necessarily the best government system to have. I mean, you have a lot of governments today which have absolute monarchs, and the case can be argued quite rightly that that is not a very good system of government to have. But when we're talking about Stomaria and me as the absolute monarch, I'm the absolute monarch because the territory of the empire, certainly more specifically I should stress, of Stomaria, is my own private property. And when it comes to private property, we're quite libertarian in people's right to private property. And so that sort of ties in that way. But because of the scale on which we are doing this, we have many different ideologies kind of blending together, because it's what's practical and pragmatic from our own perspective. So a long-winded way to say we believe in a lot of things. Archdragon says, can I be the ultimate overlord of all nations on Earth by sovereignty? I mean, no, I would imagine not. I mean, you could claim as much, but this is the thing when I've talked about this sort of thing, just claiming to be something or claiming to have something. And this is particularly the case of territory, for instance. If you claim 5,000 acres of land that you've never set foot on, never will set foot on, never owned, have any authority over, or whatever else, you can claim it until the cows come home, but it really doesn't mean anything. Stomaria, for its part, and the member states of the empire do not claim territory. We own territory, we purchase territory, we have a legal authority over that territory, and that is why we utilise that territory to advance our shared goals and objectives. And simply, if I claim there's a public park out here, I could claim that public park, but I can't utilise that to establish solar panels, I can't dig it up and plant potatoes, I can't host gatherings there, I can't have a barbecue out there or whatever else, because it's not my land. I have no jurisdiction or authority over it. But the territories of the empire is all private freehold land that is owned or in some way have someone has some authority over it that's associated with the empire. And so we can utilize it for a great many things. So I suppose in answer to your question, simply by, claiming sovereignty over the nations of the earth, welcome to do so, but it's not going to change reality. And I suppose that's where Stomaria differs from a lot of others out there, is that we are grounded in reality and what is practical and pragmatic. If it's not, we don't do it. And that would be a good example of that. Jan Vanzura says, yeah, I'm curious. I presume that's... I don't know if that's a... Yeah, okay. I think it probably addressed whatever that was your curiosity was about. Muslim Boy says, I'm so thankful to speak with you live. Thank you very much. By the way, we made a flag... What? I made your flag in emojis. What do you mean, you made my flag in emojis? I'd be interested to see it. Have you posted it? I don't see it, so I assume not. If you have made a Sumerian flag in emojis, post it in the chat or send an email or comment somewhere. I don't know how exactly it works, so I'm not a tech guy. I don't know how emojis work. Yeah, no, if you made an emoji for Stomaria, please share it with us all. Jen says, Stomaria, are you really an empire? Well, again, it depends on what exactly you're talking about, because we are an empire from our own perspective, in the sense that, since day one, when the Empire of Stomaria was formed, we were identified as a micronation, and we had myself as the emperor and Samantha as the empress, and we had the structure. We would have provinces and protectorates and associated states and all that jazz. And there's obviously many hundred thousands, tens of thousands of micronations out there that claim to be the nation of this or the empire of that or the republic of this and the republic of that, and provinces, and they had generals and provinces and protectorates and colonies and whatever else. All of these terminologies that are used have to be taken with a pinch of salt. Because what we are is an empire in the sense that what we are building is intended to become an empire. In the sense that for 99.9% of people out there, Stomaria is not a nation, and the Empire of Stomaria is not an empire. It's a group of people that have land that's utilised in order to become more self-reliant and trying to attain greater levels of self-determination through legal and legitimate means. Now, that's fine if 99.9% of the people around the world don't consider Stomaria to be an empire, because that's not particularly important to us. What the important thing is that we are taking steps, pragmatic steps, in order to accomplish what we set out to do. Now, we are structured as an empire because Stomaria is at the core of it, if you like. We have the imperial family, we have Stomaria as the core, and that Stomaria is the nation. And we have the Empire of Stomaria, which includes the member states of the empire. So we have had many come and go in the past, but at the moment it would be the Republic of Vesta and the Kingdom of Waitwood. Now, these are different communities, different nations with their own cultures, their own identities, their own aesthetics, their own flags, and all that jazz. And they have joined Stomaria's empire in order to create an empire of trade, commerce, and enterprise, in order to create a collaborative effort in order to promote our shared values and objectives. And we have a list of criteria in which we're looking for when people actually become involved in Stomaria in that way. If people want to apply as member states or whatever else, we do have various things that we look for when they do join, but we also have various terms and conditions. And so, as far as we need to be concerned, we are an empire, and Stomaria is a nation. Now, again, because a lot of people out there don't consider it as such, that's fine. It doesn't really have any impact on what we're trying to do. And I suppose, I think I used an example in times past, where if you had an island with, a few hundred, 1,000, 5,000 people, whatever else, an island, and on that island they had their own structure, they had their own government, their own society, and say, 99.9% of the world didn't acknowledge that place existed in any shape or form. It wasn't a genuine sovereign nation, it wasn't a sovereign government or whatever else. But to them, it doesn't matter, because the reality is they're just living as they choose to live. And if you had, I think, what's it called? I'm going to say it's Sentinel Island or something. Have the indigenous tribes or whatever else. They're not a sovereign nation. They're not a sovereign community. They're probably whatever chief or king or priest or whatever else might lead that particular group of people. They won't have recognition from 99.9999% of the world. But does it matter to them? No, because they're just living in reality. They're living without the concern or consideration for the opinions of others. So if they consider themselves to be an empire or a nation or a tribe or whatever else they would define themselves as, then that is what they are from their own perspective. It doesn't matter if Johnny from down the road doesn't acknowledge it. It just is what it is. I suppose you could say on a larger scale, I mean, you look at Taiwan. Taiwan is not considered a sovereign nation by the vast majority of the rest of the world, but they still exist. They still have a government. They still have elections. They still have infrastructure. They still have an armed forces and all the rest of it. It doesn't matter necessarily what everyone else thinks of. If everyone else thinks that what you are doing is ludicrous or illegitimate or they don't recognize you as X, Y, and Z, it doesn't matter, because what you are doing ultimately, if you are doing it correctly, is just living in the real world. You're living the reality in which you have determined to live, and there's not a lot people can do about that unless you're breaking the law, unless you're actively going up against laws and regulations or whatever else, or authorities in a combative way, and you're trying to forcefully make your case. Unless you are doing that, the authorities and all the rest of it and the rest of the world, by and large, will just leave you alone and leave you to it, and you will simply attract the people that do believe in what you are doing and trying to establish. So again, a long-winded way of saying Istamarian Empire, yes, from our own perspective and from the perspective of our own supporters, our own citizens, we identify as a nation, we identify as an empire. What the rest of the world considers Sumeria to be is neither here nor there to us, because it doesn't have any impact on what we are doing. Dante Caton says, how do you have so many subs and only 2 to 3 digit view counts? I'm not sure what you mean by 2 to 3 digit view counts. Are you talking about during the live or with our regular videos? Because with our regular videos, I mean, some have a few hundred views, others have, well, thousands, and some have tens of thousands. So it really depends on what you're talking about. When it comes to lives, I'm under no illusion whatsoever that very few people watch the lives. I think that's a common problem for most YouTubers. At any rate, you might have someone with 1 million subscribers, but only a few hundred or maybe 1,000 people watching at any given time, which obviously only represents a tiny percentage of the actual total subscriber count. I mean, I have seen similar channels of similar sizes attracting, again, similar audience sizes when it comes to lives. So it's not unusual for lives to attract only, a dozen or less at any given time people watching it, I don't think. But I mean, the reasons that being the case, I mean, I think it's just is what it is. I don't think it's anything particularly unique to our channel. We have the followings and the views that we do, and there's not much you can do to change or alter that. So who have we got next? I just got independence 29th of March 2024, as in 2 days ago. Okay, well, happy Independence Day, I suppose. I suppose the only thing, when people say they got their independence, Sumeria's never actually made that claim. We've never claimed to be independent or seceded from the United Kingdom, the British Isles, whatever else, because it's just not really, well, it's not true for a start. We are not an independent entity in our own right. We're not a sovereign entity in our own right. We're certainly striving for greater levels of self-determination, self-reliance. We're certainly striving for that sovereignty, but we're not, deluded into thinking that we are independent because we say we are. We're not deluded into thinking that we are sovereign because we say we are, because again, we live in reality and reality matters. So I suppose happy Independence Day for a few days ago, but the reality is what you should be doing is saying that your nation, your community, whatever else, was formed or established or whatever else you want to define it as. But in terms of being independent, I think you should be careful about using these sorts of terminologies, because ultimately it's just not true. So again, don't want to pour cold water on what you're trying to do, but I think just going forward, you might want to re-emphasize what you are trying to do is not necessarily what you have done, is probably the simplest way I can make that case. Dante Caton says, and have a population of 17. Are you talking about Stomaria? I'm not sure where the number of 17 comes from. I honestly can't even think where have you got the number 17? I don't think we've even ever reported 17 citizens. I mean, we've had milestones where we've had 20, 10, I think 15, maybe 20, 25, 30, and all the rest of it. But I don't think we've ever mentioned 17, so I'm not quite sure where that comes from. But in any case, we've always had a very small citizen count for many years. Because I mean, take the first year of Stomaria's existence, we didn't allow people to become Stomarian citizens. It was just myself and my wife, and then Princess Sealand, which is immediate family. And then for a few years after that, it was a case of if you wanted to become a Stomarian citizen, you had to go through a relatively arduous, I'd say, informal but very exclusive application process. And I interviewed many people, and many people just didn't make the cut because I didn't think they were genuinely interested in what we were doing, genuinely supportive of what we were doing, or didn't genuinely know what we were trying to do. And I wanted to make sure that we were only working with people that were going to be fully on board with what we were going to do and were going to bring something to the table. Later on, we did have a Patreon campaign set up where people could join as citizens, but again, that required a financial contribution, a regular financial contribution. And just because someone subscribes to a YouTube channel or follows on Facebook or whatever else doesn't mean they're inclined necessarily or even in a position to give us financial resources, to give us money to do what we're doing, which again is fine, because even just by being on YouTube and watching our videos, they're helping us because all of our content is monetized, so we get funds through YouTube that way. So again, it's a case of, to become a Starian citizen, you've always had to either have an interview, which is something that was obviously quite restricting in terms of people getting involved, but also the only alternative way to become a Starian citizen in times past has been to contribute financially, which a lot of people just aren't inclined to do, which is fine, because if they don't want to contribute to something financially, I'm not going to force them to do so. But yeah, I'm not sure where the population of 17 comes from. But our citizenship number is far smaller than our subscriber count. Of that, I can absolutely guarantee. Oh, sorry. Jumped out of place. Just a minute. Jan says, I watched you a lot too, and thanks to you I have independence. I literally have my Micronation in Syria, but I have to leave. Okay, that's absolutely fine. I would be very reluctant to establish any kind of micronation or nation building project in a place like Syria. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it's obviously, as far as I am aware, there's still a civil war going on there. As far as I'm aware, well, I don't know if there's still ongoing Islamic State in that neck of the woods. I think it's been largely quashed, but obviously there was that issue a few years ago. So when it comes to self-declarations of independence in places like Syria, I would be wary, to say the least. So just be careful, I'd say. The People's Nation of Homeland says, well, hello, chap. Hello there. Patrick Quinn says, would Stomaria join the likes of the UNEC Council, especially after their union growth since 2020 and 21 member states as one of the biggest unions in micronationalism? No. I have made videos about this before, I have made my opinions on this before, known, but when it comes to, well, first of all, we don't identify as anything when it comes to micronations and micronationalism. We don't get involved in that game, and haven't done for a long time. But when it comes to micronational organizations, even when we were identifying as a micronation, we never entertain the idea of joining a micronational organization because it is a waste of time. What Stomaria is, and the union that we are building, in the sense that we have Stomaria and the Empire of Stomaria, I suppose you could argue that is an organization of itself. But it's one with a very real-world, practical purpose. I mean, take Wayward and Stomaria is a very prime example. We're not talking about where we join a Discord server and talk about nothing for hours at a time and hold pointless votes on this, that, and the other, or whatever else. We're literally out there actually building something cooperatively. We're actually exchanging land, exchanging thousands and thousands of pounds of goods and territory from a legal perspective between each other. I mean, we purchased land from the Kingdom of Wayward, and that became Southward, and the rest of the territory became Wayward South. We've invested thousands of pounds into both of these territories. We have, real world meetings with a real world purpose for trade and commerce and enterprise. Simply meeting up, even in person, and patting each other on the back and giving each other some medals isn't what we're about. That isn't what we're interested in. When it comes to micronational organizations, every single one is gunning for the same thing. We are like the UN, but for micronations. We are striving for peace and stability and security within the micronational community. We're looking for cooperation and all the rest of it with our partners or whatever else. But it just never ever comes to anything. Like in reality, it never comes to fruition. Whatever they're trying to do, it just fades into the background and disappears. And added into the fact that micronations typically last between 2 weeks and 6 months. If they're lucky, they'll dissolve without changing their name 6 times within that time frame. But they just die a death as quickly as they're formed. And so you're ending up with these micronational organizations with 10, 20, 50, 100, 3,000 members or something, but 95% of them are either inactive or have actively dissolved. Again, it's pointless. I am interested in working with specific groups, specific nations, specific communities that are going to add value to Stomaria, and that Stomaria can add value to them. I want it to be mutually beneficial. I want there to be a tangible benefit. The first question that we ask when someone approaches us with this sort of thing is, what benefit is there to us? And in that same breath, what benefit is there to them? Can we offer them something? Can they offer us something? That is the bottom line. Micronational organizations just don't do that. So I'm afraid, Patrick, that the answer is no. But I wish you well in your endeavours, but I think you're just going to be hitting your head against a brick wall in time. So I would focus more on what you are trying to do rather than focus on what everyone else in that group is trying to do. The People's Nation of Homeland, I'm just going to call you Homeland. Homeland does not have an ideology. That's fine. Not all nations and aspirant communities and the rest of it do. I mean, you think of, get any typical nation and you say, what is the ideology of that nation? Like, what's the ideology of Germany? What's the ideology of France? What's the ideology of Spain? It's not really, I mean, you can say what the ideology of the government at that time is, but the ideology of the masses or the nation is just not really a factor to consider in the same way that we do. And that sort of links back to what I was saying earlier about we don't really have a specific ideology. We're just we have various values and aspirations and all the rest of it, but these come from various different points on the political spectrum. If you want to use that as a typical example of how we do it in terms of environmentalism, in terms of government structure, in terms of monetary systems, in terms of whatever else, taxation, private property, or whatever else. We have certain values and aspirations that are just based on what's pragmatic and realistic, rather than an ideological dogma, if you like. But there are certainly ideologies that we oppose, being neo-Nazism, fascism, communism, anything that oppresses people's rights or liberties, anything that's, have a long, sad track record of genocides or oppression in the last 100 years or so. Those are obviously ideologies that we don't think too fondly of and have made videos about these sorts of things in the past. But in terms of a driving ideology from our own perspective, it's not really a thing. Patrick Quinn says, I'm interested in your thoughts towards them and visa-free travel, international UMECO currency, or union license plates agreements and union passport agreements. Okay, so he says, I've been a big fan of I've been a big fan of you this year. After discovering your account in 2023, I've been a part of the European micronational community since 2015. I have watched a lot of your videos, in fact 2 earlier. It would be an honour to establish relations between the Empire of Svenland. We see a lot of similarities between the aspirations of our states. Okay, I feel like I've come across the name Svenland before, so I'll have to refresh my memory and look it up. In terms of like a one-to-one interaction with Svenland, as an example, that's fine. We can talk about that because I can have a conversation with a particular individual, a particular representative of a particular community, which may have particular values and aspirations. I don't know, for instance, who these other, was it 21 or how many nations or whatever else are involved in this micronational organisation, I might not want association with them. There's a lot of that people out there that I don't want to associate with, and that's why Stomaria has always been very reluctant to engage in formal relations with other communities, other entities, other micronations, or whatever else. So again, when it comes to these queries you have about license plates agreements or passport agreements or visa-free travel, I mean, I don't really understand what this is supposed to relate to. I mean, if I joined a micronational organisation like that and it said visa-free travel, well, okay, but if you're in, Korea, you can't just come to the United Kingdom and then come to my land and just walk onto my property, if that's what that refers to, because Sumerian territory is my land, it's my property, it's in the future going to be my home. I don't want just random people walking into my land because they say they've got a visa-free access to it. So I'm not really sure what it refers to necessarily. Again, I suppose this kind of re-emphasizes what I was talking about. I don't see anything practical or pragmatic or even possible with anything that you're talking about here. And that's not to say that it can't be done or you haven't done it, because I may well be wrong. But I just don't see the practical benefits of it. The Empire of Stomaria, for instance, when as a union, as an entity, we are an empire of trade, commerce, and enterprise. First and foremost, we're about real-world, tangible cooperation to build Stomaria into something that's going to be bigger than what it could otherwise be, and likewise to build up the member states of the empire to a higher level, to something more significant than they would otherwise be. But in terms of how we do that in the real world, we are talking about things like having Stomarian status, silver bars, which do have a real world tangible benefit that can be used in the actual world as opposed to just within Stomaria or the member states. We don't use currency, we don't use digital tokens, we don't use bits of paper or plastic coins or whatever else. We use a real world commodity. We use silver and eventually gold. And in fact, that's something that I will be talking about shortly if I get time. But in terms of engagement, everything, we meet each other. We host meetings in the real world. We have these gatherings. We interact. We exchange. I bought things from Waywoodians using the Silver Stomarian status. They've sold me things in times past. I purchased land from Waywood. I've actually, I can't really, from top to bottom, we have engaged and integrated ourselves with each other. And I just don't see how what you are trying to do is really going to accomplish anything from our own perspective. It's not going to advance us in any way. So again, happy to talk about Svenland, but I mean, I'm just being brutally honest here. I just don't see any real benefit to get involved in the organisation itself. And again, not to drag you down in any shape or form. If you've been doing this since I think you said 2020, more power to you. Maybe you'll be one of the few successful ones, or the ones that stand the test of time at least. But in terms of the practical benefits to Stomaria and the benefits that we could offer to this community, I think it's just going to be too negligible to concern ourselves with. But again, if you want to reach out to us as a representative of Svenland, please do. Homeland says, do you have any questions about Homeland? Are you talking about me specifically? Because, the first thing I would always say when it comes to people asking me if I have questions about them is to, first of all, send us, an email, a message, something with information about them. Because I could ask 1,000 questions about Homeland, as I could ask 1,000 questions about anyone else. Because even though a lot of people might know, this is not to say we're all that, or we're up there or whatever else, but a lot of people already know a lot about Stomaria. Presumably a lot of people have come onto this channel, for instance, yourself included, because you know something about Stomaria. But I don't know everything or even anything about 99.9% of the 2,000 plus people that follow us on YouTube. So it would be a very broad question to say, do you have any questions about Homeland? Because I don't know even where to start. So if you have information about Homeland and you want to send it to us, you want us to review it, either just for general information, or you want to find some sort of common ground or build some sort of affiliation with Stomaria in some way, please do that, and then I'm sure I'll have follow-up questions from that point. But at this exact moment of time while I'm doing this, not at the moment. Oh, there you go. Svenland says, what would be your main plan towards becoming recognised as a small micronation from the United Nations, or at least one macronation? Okay, I'm not going to go the micronation thing again, but when it comes to recognition, I'm not concerned about recognition, and no one should really be concerned about recognition, in the sense that there are lots of nations out there, conventional nations, which aren't recognised by other nations, or the United Nations for that matter, for one reason or another. And it doesn't stop them from functioning as nations. This idea that in order to exist, you need recognition from the United Nations, or you need recognition from a particular nation, the United States or China or whatever else, it's nonsensical to me, because there are nations that have existed, nation states and communities and kingdoms and empires and all the rest of it, well before the United Nations came about. And since the United Nations came about, there have been plenty of nations, and there are plenty of nations today that exist that are either not recognised by the United Nations in its entirety, or aren't recognised by the vast majority of nations that are members of the UN. So people should stop getting hung up on this idea that recognition is necessary in order to accomplish your goals. Now, don't get me wrong, if the United Kingdom or France or Germany or whatever else said, we actually recognise Stomaria, that would be an immense boost to our credibility. But again, because we live in reality, because what we are doing is rooted in pragmatism, we're just not concerned about it. We're not writing letters to these embassies or to the governments of these nations and saying, please recognise us, because we know perfectly well what the answer is going to be, for a start. But more to the point, when it comes to sovereignty, even if we wanted it, even if we had the opportunity, would we want it? Would we really want, at this point in our development, to go, we are a sovereign independent entity, knowing full well that we have, in the United Kingdom, for instance, whatever it's going to be, half an acre, 2/3 of an acre of land, which, although it's developed, is that going to be the boundary of our home? We have no infrastructure there, we have no developments there. Are we really going to want that sort of boarded off? And have to show our passport every time we want to leave that territory to go to the shops or take my little girl to school? Could she even go to school? Because it would be in a different country. I mean, these are the real world practical things you need to actually think about. Sovereignty is great, but you need to get to that point. There's no point in saying my bedroom is a sovereign nation, or my home is a sovereign nation, or the 3 or 4 acres that I've got with a house on it is a sovereign nation. Because ultimately, just think of the actual real world implications of that if you did become a sovereign nation. I mean, against all the odds, and reality just wasn't a factor in this. If you became a sovereign entity in your own right, do you have the ability? Do you have Wi-Fi towers? Do you have the internet? Do you have a means of generating all of your electricity for yourself and your family and your entire community? Do you have all the necessary food? Do you have a monetary system in place? Do you really want to have all of your accounts or records shut down that are associated with the United Kingdom or whatever else, or wherever you might be in the world? I don't know specifically where you are, but it's just a case of what world you really want to live in. I don't want to show my passport every time I want to go out the front door. Maybe if Stomaria had thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of land with hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people that were full-time hardcore Sumerian citizens in some part of the country, and we were able to supply our own power. We were on a massive industrial scale, and we were able to provide our food on a massive industrial scale. We were able to establish manufacturing industries on a massive industrial scale. You get the point. As long as we could actually establish something that resembled a modern nation that we could support our own community on, until we get to that point, why is sovereignty even something that you want to consider going for, even if you had that option? I can't even remember where I was on this. Were we talking about we must have been talking about sovereignty. We're talking about recognition. Okay, recognition. Okay, I suppose maybe there was a tangent on my part, but yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. Sven then also said, what is your advice on selling citizenship or making websites and for monetizing a micronation for growth, as well as making financial boards within a micronation like a company register? I think the first thing I have to say is that I don't know why people try to overcomplicate this as much as they do in terms of like setting up registered businesses and trying to create tax incentives or trying to find a way to mitigate taxes in some of the more complex ways imaginable. Again, just accept reality for what it is. Accept what you are building for what it is at this moment in time. In the future, things may change, but just accept what you're doing at the moment. What you're doing at the moment is you might be an individual or a small group of people or a family or whatever else that is trying to establish a community, a nation, it might be an empire or whatever else. And that's laudable. And I have a lot of time and appreciation for people that actually take steps to actually make real world practical steps towards that end. Um, but you've got to just think logically about this. Don't try to overcomplicate it. In terms of selling citizenship, I mean, I just like the term selling citizenship to start with, because you're not really. I mean, I don't know if you. Maybe it's just my reading of it, but when it comes to trying to encourage people to become citizens, I think the first thing you've got to do is either, if not give them a specific benefit or a reason to join, then you definitely need to present yourself in a way that shows them that what they are joining is actually taking steps to accomplish what it's set out to do. If I, over the last 5 years, was still sat in my car, which is how I started my YouTube channel, well, in fairness, that was about a year after we actually found it, but when I started the YouTube channel, I was sat in the back of my car, or the front of my car rather, doing these YouTube videos, mainly because little Princess Ladonia had just been born, and I didn't want to disturb her while filming. But if I was still filming in my car with no land, with no assets, with no merchandise, with no association or affiliation with other nations or communities, without meeting anyone in the real world, without developing anything in the real world, do I think Stomaria would be where it is today in terms of how far we've grown, in terms of our popularity, in terms of the number of people that identify as Sumerian citizens, in terms of the number of people that contribute to us financially, in terms of the number of people that contact us about formal affiliations with Sumeria? It wouldn't be a fraction of that. The reason that Sumeria is successful isn't a great secret, and the reason that people join Sumeria isn't a great secret. People support us, follow us, and join us because we are doing what we said we were going to do. And that's the bottom line. We set out a roadmap of what we wanted to do, how we wanted to accomplish it, in a real, practical, pragmatic sense. And we have just gradually taken those steps in accomplishing that. Sometimes it's taken longer than we wanted. Sometimes those steps have been very minor. A good example, as I mentioned earlier in this video, is the solar panels. From day one, we are a big promoter of renewable energy for various reasons, which I'm not going to get off into here because it will go into a tangent. But it wasn't until 2023 that we acquired our first solar panel. That was 4 years later. And that was just a little 28 watt charger, a 28 watt solar panel with a charger, which we did use. We to experiment with it. And then we had a little slightly larger solar panel on the roof of the shed towards the ends of 2023. And now in 2024, we're getting 240 watt solar panels with control chargers and all that jazz installed on the shed instead. And even then you can say, well, that's still very small potatoes, that's still very minor, but you can see where the progress is. You can see there's a track record of what we said we were going to do and how we have gradually accomplished this and how we will continue to accomplish this. Going forward, I don't doubt for a minute that we'll have hundreds of square meters or thousands of square meters of entire fields full of solar panels, either feeding electricity to Sumerian citizens or Sumerian dwellings, but if not that, then selling it back to the grid. We will be supplying the United Kingdom with energy. We'll be selling, well, I say supplying is probably the wrong word, we'll be selling Sumerian energy to the United Kingdom government, and that will be used to fund ongoing activities within Sumeria if it's not required in Sumeria itself. And again, this is just a small step in that direction. Just to re-emphasize, if you want people to join, you've got to give them some reason to do so, or you've got to show them that what you are trying to do is actually worth supporting. I think is the bottom line. When it comes to, what else did you say? Making websites, very straightforward on this one. I've always used the same website provider, which is 123reg. There are most certainly other providers of websites. It's not sponsored or anything by Stomaria. But you just want something clean cut, simple. I would avoid using free website builders or various names, which I'm not going to get into here. But I would avoid using free ones because it just doesn't look very sleek. It doesn't look professional, and more to the point, you just don't look serious. You know, if you can't contribute whatever it is, £120 a year or whatever to a website, or less, depends on what you get, I suppose, with a dedicated domain and a dedicated email address and all that jazz, if you can't contribute even that to your website, to the wider world, then why should anyone believe that what you are trying to do is going to be successful? You can't even create your own website and you're expecting people to believe they're going to build a nation. So again, that's just something I would emphasize. If you are going to, I mean, for the record, you don't need a website to actually do this. I mean, Kingdom of Waven being a very good example, they don't have a website because they are doing things in the practical real world. I'm just saying that if you do get a website, then you want it to be professional, you want it to be slick, and you want people to believe that it's not just some, pokey, roughly done free website builder with still being constructed pages all over it, because it doesn't inspire confidence at all. So in terms of monetizing a micronation for growth, I think, well, I presume you just mean generally speaking, but there are lots of ways you can monetize your national community, in the sense that there's many ways in which you can have streams of revenue. It could be through citizenship, so people could join through Patreon, as we used to do, or just contribute financially as a donation through GoFundMe or PayPal, or however you do it. You could raise revenue through the sale of merchandise if there's a market for it. You could raise revenue through more conventional means. It might be growing and selling food, or providing a service, or building, I don't know, chair and tables or whatever else, and just selling that. The thing that I would always stress when it comes to this sort of thing is that anything that you can think of in terms of making money now for yourself is something that you can simply apply to your nation or to your community, by and large, probably excluding anything to do with the citizenship or merchandise specific to that nation or community. But in terms of what you can do to generate money, well, what does Stomaria do to generate money? We obviously do go down the routes that I have said. We have sold merchandise in the past. We have, we do insist on citizens in the past contributing financially on a monthly basis through Patreon, or making voluntary contributions as we do now. So that's obviously streams of revenue from there. We also monetize our YouTube channel, I think, where are we now? Probably nearly 3 years ago. So we've been generating money that way. So all of the YouTube ad revenue obviously funnels back to us and funds Stomaria that way. But aside from anything Stomarian specific, you just go out there and you do what you would normally do as an individual. You can provide a good or service is probably the simplest way I can do it. Actually go out there and just make yourself available in terms of people's ability to provide you with financial reward in terms of something that you can provide. If you end up mowing lawns, or digging holes, or making furniture, or selling agricultural produce, or whatever else, do that. Just do it in a nation building capacity and advertise that. I can't stress that enough. Show people what you are doing. If you have a flock of chickens and you allocate it to your nation and community, and the sale of those eggs from those chickens goes towards funding your nation or community, talk about it. Show people what you are doing. That is how you attract people. That is how you generate revenue. That is how you continue to generate interest. Stomaria, when it was founded, consisted of myself, my wife, a flag in the corner of my living room, about 17 followers on our Facebook page. We now have over 5,000 people that follow us on our Facebook page. We set up our YouTube channel about a year after we were founded. We're one of the largest nation building channels out there. Over 2,000 people following us on that front. Again, it's monetized, so that's generating revenue. You can do a lot just by talking about what you are doing and showing people what you are doing. And I think one of the things I would say is also, if you are the leader, the founder, or representative of the nation or community that you're building, put your face out there. I think is probably one of the biggest things. One of the biggest issues I have when people approach us is I'll look up this nation or this community or whatever else, and I won't be able to find a photo or a video or anything else, or even a voiceover of the founder or the leader or the highest authority of that nation or community or micronation or however they define themselves. And that's always a red flag for me, because in my mind, if you can't put your face and your name to something in the way that I do, for instance, then I'm really hesitant to believe that you are going to be someone that's going to stand the test of time. To me, it's an out, if you like. It's like, well, I can give this a go. If it doesn't work out, I haven't put my face or my name out there, so it doesn't really matter. And to me, that's just a lack of commitment. There might be some more genuine reasons in terms of privacy, in terms of your the nature of your job or whatever else, or there might be again any number of genuine, legitimate reasons. But to me, it's just a bit of a red flag, because I think, well, I trust people more. I trust nations and communities more if I know who they are, like the people behind them. So again, that's just another way, again, I think, to attract people. Right. And again, when it comes to financial boards, the company register for your micronation, I can't even speak for myself, but just ask yourself if it's absolutely necessary to do that. If it's not necessary or practical or pragmatic, or is actually going to bring value to what you're trying to do, just don't do it. It's as simple as that, really. Homeland says, maybe we could start up trade. How close are you to Sussex? Well, we're Hampshire, so not far away as the crow flies. Southward and wayward south is actually in Bransgore, which is quite close to the coast in Hampshire. Is it? I think it's the Isle of Wight. You can potentially see. Is it the Isle of Wight? Yes, it's the Isle of Wight. You can potentially see on a clear day. If you, I think it's only about 10 miles from the coast. Maybe to be honest, it might even be less than that. But we're South Hampshire on that front. But I'm actually in Fleet, which is about as North Hampshire as you can get. So yeah, in terms of location, you're not, I imagine, too far away in terms of a drive or a train journey or whatever else. So it's definitely a possibility. I don't rule that entirely, but it depends on what you're able to provide. It depends on various other factors in terms of how long you've been around, in terms of what you've been doing, in terms of how old you are, in terms of your public record, in terms of, that is to say, what you've been posting online, how you've been behaving online, or whatever else. Basically, we only want to associate with those that aren't going to bring Stomaria into disrepute. I don't want people to come across Stomaria and go, this is fantastic, but they've associated with so-and-so and such, who said this, that, and the other, and it just puts people off from getting involved. But yeah, I don't object to the inquiry, I don't object to the idea in principle. It's just a case of finding out what exactly you want to provide, finding out who you are in more detail, and we'll go from there. But if you are interested in that sort of thing, and this goes for anyone, I suppose, I think the best way to do it is just contact us by email. The details you can find on our website, but if you contact us by email, that is the best way to do it, and that's the way I prefer to do it, because it's a lot more formal, a lot more streamlined, and a lot easier for me to keep track and keep a record of those who have tried to approach us or are going through an application process, as opposed to doing it through a Discord message and then a Facebook page message, and then a message through Reddit or whatever else. It just keeps it more streamlined for me. So if you can do it through our email address, send us some inquiries and we'll touch base. Sobrick says, fair enough, Stomaria and Flandrenland would be cool. I'm guessing that's open. Yeah, I mean, Flandrenland, again, I've not obviously done any research since I last came across the name, because I'm still doing this live, but I'm sure I have heard the name before. So I am interested in learning more about it, just to see what it's about. Patrick Quinn says, appreciate your answers. You're more than welcome. I'm sorry if they're perhaps more brutally honest, but I'm someone that's probably quite well known for being quite, I think callous is probably the wrong word, but I certainly like to just speak the truth as it is. I don't like to sugarcoat it if I can avoid it, because I want to make my position on these sorts of things clear. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I'm not sure. Oh, okay, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Svenland has sent you an email involved in diplomatic relations. It would be an honour. Okay, super. I tell you what, let me just quickly check. Oh my goodness, okay. Can I ask, is this like a copy and paste? What? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to read this. Like, sorry, I appreciate I am doing this in the middle of a live, but I'm a bit confused about the names of all of these names that have nothing to do with Stomaria. Diplomatic proposal, establishment of relations between the Kingdom of Svenland and the Principality of Angosria. Ingosria? I think maybe it's just being copied and pasted from another email, but some of the... because there's other ones as well. Like the names of other nations and communities I think have been in it, so maybe... Sorry, don't mean to call you out live, but maybe resend it with some references to Stomaria in the email, and then we'll talk. Sven says, what is Stomaria's future aspirations and goals? Our aspirations and goals have always been the same, and we are accomplishing those as I speak, in the sense that we are trying to build an empire of autonomous member states that are building something genuine and generational. We are trying to attain greater levels of self-reliance and self-determination through legal and legitimate means, and attaining a de facto independence through the back door. We don't require genuine sovereignty, we don't require recognition, we are just going to get to our position where if the apparatus around us no longer existed, would we survive, would we thrive? That is to say, if the water got turned off, you couldn't go to the shops anymore to buy your food, if the fiat currency system collapsed in on itself, would we be okay? At the moment, I can confidently say that we would not. But we are taking steps towards that end. So what are we doing? We are acquiring land, we're growing food, we're producing energy, we're supplying our own water, we're utilising silver as a medium of exchange for this Sumerian status. We are accomplishing all of this on small scales, but ever larger scales. And again, just to link back what I was saying about solar panels, we started with a little 28 watt solar panel, and then a slightly larger panel, and now we're on a 240 watt solar panel. In a few years' time, it'll be thousands of watts or kilowatts or whatever else. It'll be something grander than what we have now, and that is what we're accomplishing. And I am going to make a video about this at some point in the near future, about how far we have progressed. You think of where we were in terms of the content that I put out on YouTube when I was starting in my car, and then I was sat on my sofa in my living room in various outfits, and now I'm here in a slightly more professional capacity, doing lives for everyone. Or you take this utilization of sound money. We used generic bullion, that is to say like Britannias or things like that, because it was just silver, so we just utilized that, and then we transitioned from Britannias, which is a UK money obviously, and we transitioned to stated coins, like little 5 gram coins. They're the first coins we ever had, but that wasn't as efficient. It was quite inefficient from a cost perspective, so we transitioned again from the coins to the stated bars, which are a lot more cost effective and have been utilized quite a lot. I think we've I do need to make a record of just how much we've acquired in terms of stated coins and stated bars, and then how much we actually have left, because it gives a very clear indication of how much is now circulating in the wider world. But I think it would probably be around a third of the status, the coins and the bars, that we've ever acquired is now circulating outside of the Imperial Treasury. And it just goes to show that it is being utilised in a real way. So, I suppose just to re-emphasise, what we are doing is what we aspire to do. We just want to do it on ever grander scales. The Kingdom of Hurricano? Again, pronunciations. Oh my, Svenland actually here, wow. Sobrick says, does Stomaria have a constitution? No, we don't. it's very simple, very straightforward how Stomaria works. When it comes to Stomaria itself, my word is law. Whatever I say goes. And the reason for that is very simple. It's me that's invested the time, the energy, the resources. It's me that's purchased the land. It's me that owns the land. I don't need people telling me what I can and cannot do. And that sort of feeds into this narrative of both libertarianism and absolute monarchianism. From my perspective, as an absolute monarch, I can do whatever the damn well I like with my own land, with my own property. But equally, as a libertarian, from a private, personal perspective, much is the same. I can do whatever I like with my land. I don't need other people telling me what I can do. I'm not going to deliberately handicap myself. And this is something that I get frustrated about with some other entities and communities. They will create these different branches. They'll create a legislature, an executive, a judiciary, and then have various branches of each, and there'll all be checks and balances and everything else. And then they'll be stuffed full of people because that either have a minimal or uninterested role in what they're actually doing, and it just paralyzes everything, in the sense that if you're relying on Dylan on showing up to pass some legislation, but Dylan was busy because his girlfriend came around that night, how are you supposed to operate like that if you're paralyzed by your own infrastructure? My infrastructure is very clean cut. If I want to do something, I'll do it. Now, when it comes to Stomaria's empire, that's not much more complicated, but there is an extra layer on top of that. We have something called the Imperial Court. Now, the Imperial Court is just where people come together, let's say representatives of the empire as a whole. That is the governors of each of the provinces and representatives of each of the member states. They'll come together and they will be privy to the information that's going around on the upper echelons of Stomaria and the Empire. We will discuss things concerning the Empire as a whole and all the rest of it. I will explain what I want to do about certain things. We'll discuss certain aspects of Stomaria or the Empire, and then a decision will ultimately be made. But the Imperial Court is an advisory body. If I don't want to do something with Stomaria or with the Empire more generally, then I won't do it. The only exception to this, the only authority and control that I don't have, is over the provinces of the member states. That is to say, take, you could take either example. Take the Republic of Vesta, for instance. The Republic of Vesta is a member state. So as a part of the Empire, there's a certain infrastructure in place. There's a certain way of doing things. There's certain expectations of Vesta when it comes to its association with Stomaria and the Empire. But when it comes to the domestic policies or the domestic affairs or the ongoing activities on the provinces that Vesta controls, that being Augusta, which is like a 40-acre plot of land in Wyoming, I have absolutely no jurisdiction over that. Why? Because it's not my land. And that is, again, what feeds into this more libertarian side of Stomaria. I respect other people's right to private property and to utilise that property however they see fit. I might recommend things, I might discuss things with certain aspects of how they're developing it, but I have no authority or jurisdiction over that. And that is why Stomaria is a federal monarchy. We are a federal empire. I control every aspect of Stomaria's territory, but when it comes to the territory of the member states, that is their domain. But we have nevertheless created an organization, if you like, an infrastructure, a union, in which we can collaborate more closely with one another in order to accomplish common goals. So the short answer is no, we don't have a constitution, because I think it just, anything that handicaps my ability to actually function is something I'm just not going to entertain. Homeland says, the best option I have is eBay. It's like, yeah, I mean, we used to use eBay. I mean, the fees on eBay these days are extortionate, in my opinion. But eBay is something that we did use for the sale of a lot of our merchandise. We actually stopped that relatively recently because we then transitioned to the sale of merchandise to our own website. But we've actually stopped that as well because, again, that's on my list of things that I want to discuss but haven't had the opportunity yet. But certainly selling on Etsy or eBay or through your own website or whatever else is definitely a good way of doing it. eBay is quite good because it's popular, but also it gives people a greater sense of confidence in what they're buying, in the sense that there are certain protections you can get through eBay which you wouldn't necessarily get if you purchased through someone's website. So, if you came across some random nation or community and they said, buy our merchandise on our website, maybe you'd be a bit more reluctant to do so. But if you went through eBay, this is just my mentality anyway. Maybe if you went through eBay, there is some level of protection there for the buyer. So if something went awry or whatever else, you could potentially get your money back, or whatever else. So again, I think eBay is definitely a good way to go about it initially, but just be aware that the fees can be quite extortionate when it comes to selling on eBay. Gretico says, Gretico is interested in making silver coins. Do you know where we should start? Is there a company that does this stuff? There are. So, trying to think how to best go about this. So when it comes to the minting of silver stated coins, and I think Gretico is in the British Isles. If not, it's not necessarily applicable. But we went through a company called Coins for Anything. They effectively designed and supplied our coins. However, I should stress that the reason that we transitioned away from the coins and to the stated bars instead of stated coins is because the cost of minting these coins is quite high, in the sense that the premium as a percentage is massive. I think, what was it, 400% premium, I think, on the coins. So if you're buying it as a novelty, it's fine. If you are utilizing them in a closed network, which is how we used to cope with it, that is to say, we would only trade with member states and formal trade partners. So when we gave someone a coin, we could expect at some point that coin to come back, we provided them with another good or service, so it was closed. But when we started to realize that this was gradually opening up, and coins were coming out of circulation and being pocketed by people that weren't affiliated with Stomaria or the Empire or any of our trade partners, and they were just interested in the silver bullion, which is fine, it's obviously their right to do so. But for every coin that came out of circulation, we had to replace at a loss. And so what we decided to do is we transitioned to the stated bars, which is far more cost effective. So we have these 50-gram bars, plain bars, and we actually hand stamp them. So we get the hand stamps for about 60 quid, give or take £60. And we simply acquire these silver bars from gold bullion dealers, which is a UK-based company, and which is again something I actually want to talk about in a moment. And we hand stamp them. And these are obviously a lot cruder than coins. They're not as beautiful or aesthetically attractive. But at the end of the day, silver is silver. And if you're going to have 1 gram of silver in the bar and 1 gram of silver in a coin, both the same amount of silver, but if the premium on the coin is going to be 450% and the premium on the bar is going to be maybe somewhere between 40 and 60, it's a lot more sensible and a lot more economical to go down the route of hand stamping your own bars as opposed to having coins professionally made. But again, it depends on what exactly you're trying to do. So those are the two companies that we've used in the past and continue to use now. Although I should stress that when it comes to the coinage, I think unlikely at this point that we're going to continue the use of the coins, purely because the economic benefits of just using the bars is just so much more significant, and it means that we have an actual input in its production. So when we get the plain silver bar, it's us that actually has the anvil. We put the bar on there, we actually stamp it. We are actually creating that, and that just adds an extra layer of involvement in our own capacity, which I think is quite nice, for lack of a better term, because it is our own monetary system. And having some involvement in that is something that I'm quite proud to be involved with. So who's next to it? The Republic of Slovakia says, hello, does Stomaria have relations or have contact with the British royal family? Not as far as I'm aware. No, that is the short answer to that one. Ethanstan or Ethistan, Okul, Slovakia, okay. Because we're trying to convince a gentleman or an entity whose name I'm not going to pronounce to recognise Slovakia as a sovereign nation. Step 1, contact the president of Finland. Okay. By the way, did you watch that video of the ship President Conway and former Vice President? Oh yeah, the ship that you built. I think that was probably in January or February. You mentioned that. I did actually have a look at that. It kind of looked, I'm trying to think now, I'm pretty sure it was made of cardboard or something, but yeah, I can see why rain would definitely damage your boat. But yes, I did briefly see it. Yes. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, my apologies. We have corrected the typos and diplomatic relations request. Feel free to review and copy which we amended. Okay, so they've resent that. I'll have a look in that moment. Thank you very much, Sealand. I shall review that in due course. It might not be tonight, it's already getting quite late, but I will review that certainly. Democratic Republic of Beluga says hi, hello there. Jenna the Hacker, how do I get citizens? You're going to have to, I've discussed this already with someone else, you're going to have to scroll back a little bit. Short answer is, give them a reason to join. Either give them an actual tangible benefit for joining, or actually show people that what you are doing is genuine, is real, and them joining isn't going to be a waste of their time or their money. That's the short answer, but I have already discussed this in this particular live, so you'll just have to scroll back and find that. Republic of Civica says, wondering on how we should talk to you, like, for example, as Your Highness, Your Majesty, or what. Weirdly enough, this is where, well, I suppose not weirdly enough, this is one of the issues that I have with Micronations, micronationalism, as a lot of things actually are. When it comes to Micronations and micronationalism, there is this weird obsession with medals and titles and this idea that you have to respect me because I've given myself this title and this award and this honour, and don't you know who I am? You need to refer to me as this, you need to refer to me as that. I, as the Emperor of Stomaria, I introduce myself as the Emperor of Stomaria because that's how people will know me, that's what I am. And normally I will sign myself off as the Emperor of Stomaria in emails, in normally the initial email, and then I'll just revert to Andrew Stott. I'll say, Andrew Stott, Emperor of Stomaria, and then normally what I'll do is in future emails, that if I'm talking to the same person, I'll just say Andrew Stott, because I've already made that sort of formal introduction. When it comes to people that refer to me as Your Imperial Majesty, which I suppose is the correct terminology to use, when they do that for any length of time, I do normally say, you don't actually have to refer to me as Your Imperial Majesty. I'm the Emperor of Stomaria because Stomaria is an empire. But when it comes to titles and medals and awards and all the rest of it, it really just doesn't mean that much to me. So you can refer to me as however you like. If you sent me an email saying, hello Andrew, I'm interested in affiliations with the Stomaria or whatever else, or interested in joining Stomaria, I don't take offence. It doesn't matter to me. Your Imperial Majesty is probably the official way you wouldn't go about it. But I'm not one of those people that places any real genuine value on being referred to correctly in that sense, because at the end of the day, I'm quite, well, despite what many people might think, I'm quite a humble guy. I mean, I just don't care. I'm interested in growing food, producing energy, minting stater coins, supplying my own water, providing for my family, providing for my community. When it comes to flashy titles and flashy medals and flashy awards and appreciation and recognition from people that are more well known in the Micronational community, the in-crowd, the ivory tower lot, I'm not interested. It doesn't bother me, it doesn't faze me. So yeah, refer to me with as much or as little respect as you so wish in the emails. Ladonia says hello. I presume that's someone else. I think I did acknowledge you earlier. Jonathan the Hacker, hello Micronations. Do you guys have a habit? Have tips on how to get citizens? Ladonia says, is there a process for visiting Stomaria? I mean, not really. I mean, if I know you, then and you want to come, then I'll invite you over to Southwood, which is, at this time at least, the only Stomarian province that we have. People can't just rock up there and wander about because, again, it's my land, and there are obviously, more often than not, there's cameras, dogs, and people already there. So I wouldn't recommend trying to go there, certainly if you knew where we were, because it might not necessarily end well for you. Not because you're going to necessarily, be hunted down or whatever else, but if you sort of trespass on someone's land, then people that might be on the land or have animals that might not enjoy strangers on the land, I can't say for certainty what might happen. So yeah, the short answer is, if you want to visit Stomaria, drop us an email, let me know who you are, where you are, how you intend to get there, and then we'll meet you there. It's not massive state secret on that front. So yeah, not a formal process, but if you want to come and have a look, you're welcome to do so. Jan the Hacker, how do I make people feel welcome? I presume this is to do the citizen question, so again, I'll refer you back to my previous answer. Homeland says, goodbye, see you later, People's Nation Home out. Okay, bye-bye, Homeland. Good to see you. Jenna, the hacker, says, again, how do I get recognized by a country to make a nation? Refer back to earlier content on this live. I have already discussed this. Homeland says, hey, finally, someone who says bye to me. Goodbye, and hopefully see you all soon. Yep, I'm sure we'll see you soon. I think if people haven't already picked up on this, I am trying to do this on the 1st of every month. So on the 1st of January, on the 1st of February, on the 1st of March, and the 1st of April. The next one will be scheduled on the 1st of May. So I'm trying to do that so people have an idea of when to expect these. They might be more frequent than that. They might be a day or two out, depending on what else has happened in my own life. But that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. So if you are interested in joining us for another live, that'll be the next time that happens. Sufika says, also considering you're an emperor, did you have a coronation? And if yes, was it filmed? No, I didn't have a coronation because I'm a self-appointed emperor. I don't require, some guy or some people to declare me as the emperor. I don't require anyone's approval to do what I'm doing. So if I was ever going to have a coronation, I would probably go a full Napoleon and crown myself, as opposed to having anyone else crown me, because I am the arbiter of my own life. I forge my own destiny. I don't require anyone's approval to identify as the Emperor of Stomaria, and I haven't required anyone's approval to accomplish what I have. So, no, short answer, never had a coronation. May never have one, because I don't really see the point necessarily. 5 years into this, it seems a bit of a moot point at the moment. I think people already know who I am. And no, obviously it was not filmed because it never happened. Ladonia says, our nation is growing quite a lot recently. Our population system grown to 10 with a few applications yet to be accepted. Good, pleased to hear it. Jenna the Hacker says, what is Stomaria's population? I can't even think of the top of my head. Probably, it's like mid-30s, I think, from memory. I got a few more a few more people that have joined as citizens recently by contributing through our PayPal, which I talked about earlier in this live. So I just still need to process them. But yeah, somewhere in the mid-30s, I think, is about where we're at the moment with that one. Right, finally caught up. So I do actually want to, while I have a moment, just discuss the final few things on this little list. So the first one is the Imperial Market. So the Imperial Market was originally on eBay, and then we went from eBay to our website, and I've since removed it from our website. And the reason for this is pretty straightforward. I want the Imperial Market to be a more Stomarian-themed enterprise, in the sense that we did what most people do. We put it on eBay or a website or anything and said, this flag costs X amount of pounds or whatever else, £25, £30. Instead of doing that, what I want to do is I took it offline, because I want people to acquire flags, badges, passport covers, whatever it might be, Stomarian merchandise, utilizing Stomarian status. That is to say, status is the money that we use. We have stated coins, we have stated bars, and predominantly stated bars going forward, I imagine. But basically, I want people to be able to pay Stomaria in status for merchandise. And the only way to earn status is to actually go out and work for them. That is to say, if someone wants to provide us with a good or service, a citizen, a supporter, whoever else, we can supply them with silver Stomarian status, which is pure 999 fine silver, in a form of a coin or a bar. If they accumulate enough of these, if they so wish, they can use these to buy Stomarian merchandise. And in this way, we are creating or re-emphasizing the need to develop a Stomarian economy that is not utilizing pound sterling. Now, obviously, to become a Stomarian citizen, we still go through the process of contributing financially, because at the end of the day, we do require pound sterling to actually buy the status. We require pound sterling to buy the land, to develop the land, to buy the website, to buy the stables, to buy the uniforms for the Imperial Guard, whatever else it might be. But in terms of trying to promote a localized Sumerian economy. That is what I would like to do. So for people that are wondering, I have had a couple of people ask over the last month or so, how do I go about buying pin badges, flags, passport covers, or whatever else that we used to advertise on our website as something that you could purchase. The only way to do that now is by first earning Sumerian status and then using those Sumerian status to buy the merchandise. And I think that'll be a good roundabout way of encouraging the utilization of sound money. Now, leading on to that, which is the final thing I want to discuss now, is the recent acquisition. They haven't been minted yet, they haven't even been received yet, but I've recently acquired another 2 kilograms of pure 999 fine silver in the form of 50 gram Stomarian. Sorry. Every time I talk, I get all these notifications come up about people commenting. I don't read the comments, but sometimes they're so long that I kind of get sidetracked. I have recently acquired 2 kilograms of pure 999 fine silver through 50 gram silver bars, which are going to be hand stamped as 50 stater bars. So, in case it's not already clear, one stater or one silver stater is 1 gram of silver. So it's very straightforward. If you have a 50 gram silver bar with 50 staters on it, that's because it is 50 grams of silver. So with this influx of 2,000 silver staters, that's going to more than double the holdings in the Imperial Treasury, and is going to be something that we can utilize to actually pay people as a form of a reward for their services or for their goods or whatever else. It might be through trade, it might be, again, through the provision of a service of some sort. But if they earn the status that way, then they can use those status in turn to buy Sumerian merchandise if they so wish, or they can just hold on to the silver. And the silver, for those who are interested, is actually valued at the spot price of silver. So even though that we, as Stomaria, purchase the silver, and we pay a premium on that, a massive premium of that comparatively, because of the VAT and the taxes and the profit margins of the company that we're buying it from, when we actually utilize it, we are doing that at a loss. And we do that very deliberately, because we want to take the hit, if you like, and then pass on the savings to the people that are benefiting Stomaria, in the sense that we want Stomarian citizens to be able to acquire silver at the cheapest possible price. And doing it based on the spot price of silver is probably the cheapest way anyone will ever be able to acquire silver, because there's always a markup on silver. There's always a premium on silver, the physical silver, I should stress, as opposed to, buying it through the stock market or whatever else. But in terms of acquiring physical silver, this is probably one of the cheapest, not the cheapest means of actually earning silver, pure silver, is by working for Stomaria, by providing a service to Stomaria, providing goods to Stomaria. And so if we buy a 50 gram silver bar and it costs, I don't know, £45, but there's only £35 worth of silver in it, we will base the value of that on that £35. We will take the hit and we will give the people the necessary goods. So that is the last thing I wanted to discuss, but that again feeds into what I was saying about trying to promote the Stomarian economy. It's a significant investment, obviously, but this is something that I'm quite keen to do because I want to benefit as many people as possible. I want to encourage the development of Stomarian economy as possible, and this is just another step in that direction, a very small step. Again, in the future, 1 kilogram of silver, 2 kilograms of silver, 5, 10, 50 kilograms of silver, it'll be nothing in the great scheme of things. When I'm thinking in the future, I'm going to be counting Stomarian status in the tons. I don't doubt that for a minute. It's perfectly possible to do, unless obviously we have the hyperinflation that we all know is going to happen at some point, well before I get to that point. But again, drop in the ocean, drop in the bucket compared to where we want to be, but far more than what we had 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And you see where I'm going with this. Everything that we do is taking these incremental steps in developing things further. We're not changing course in anything, in any major way. We're just doing everything that we set out to do on ever larger scales. And sooner or later, it'll get to a point where we can turn around, see where we started with 105 gram silver coins, and then look at the, 50, 100, 250, 1,000 kilograms worth of silver status we have in the treasury and go, yeah, we have made a transition. And that's ultimately where we want to go with that. So again, people who are interested in Imperial Treasury want an update of the the stater situation in the Imperial Treasury, then that's where we're at the moment. So let me just catch up with these quickly. Jenna the Hacker says 30 wow, that's in reference to the citizens that we have. Sylvikia says, also, how can we build infrastructure? I know the basics, but make it actually function, because our nation looks like Southwood when you first bought it. Well, in fairness, when we first bought it, the Kingdom of Wayward, who owned the property beforehand, had put in some works before, but it's obviously, it's fair to say it's a lot cleaner, tidier, more streamlined, and perhaps a lot more efficient than it was. I mean, there's no real easy way to do this. It depends on what your land is. First of all, I just need to double check that the land that you have is actually something you have some control authority over, something that you actually can utilize, because if you start to build infrastructure there, if you start to establish something meaningful and genuine there, and you spend hours and hours and hours, or days and days and days, or weeks and months and months and months, and trying to build that, and spend hundreds or thousands of pounds, or whatever the currency you may use in your home nation, on developing that, and then all of a sudden the authorities come and go, well, what are you doing here on this public land? Or the private owner of that land comes and go, what are you doing on my land? And then it's all for naught. So first of all, I just need to double check that the land that you're actually going to develop is actually something that you have control and authority or ownership over. The second thing I would say is that there's no easy way around this. It's going to take a lot of elbow grease. That's what I had to do. You know, as I say earlier, I'm not fussed about titles or medals or awards, but my medals and awards are the scars on my body, which I've accumulated in my efforts to turn Southwood into what it is today. You know, it might be taking down fencing, or putting down fencing, or establishing raised beds, or turning them over, or planting whatever I need to plant, or landscaping the land, or planting the seeds, or building the sheds, or, you know, whatever else. It just takes a lot of work, and there's no easy way to go about you know, circumventing that in any way. It just depends on what exactly you're trying to do. If you're trying to develop an agricultural industry, if you're trying to develop a forestry industry, if you're trying to develop an energy industry, if you're trying to develop an industry based on livestock or fishing or whatever else. I just don't know what the land is like. You said it is like Southwood, so I assume it's just like overgrown forest land, perhaps. In which case, again, it depends where you are in the world, but and how much control or ownership or authority you have over it. But you have to be careful when you start pulling things out. Do you have permission to chop down those trees or rearrange those bushes? Do you have permission to put up that fence? Do you have permission to put out that shed? Do you have permission to do this, that, and the other? Find out first before you start work, and then you can decide from there where you want to go with it. But there's no point in me saying what you should do, because I really don't know your circumstances. All I will say is that whatever you intend to do, make sure it's all legal, above board, and prepared to be putting in a lot of time, effort, and, if, above all else, money, because that is ultimately what it takes. And is ultimately why a lot of these self-defined nations or communities or micronations or whatever they might define themselves as fail, because they just can't commit that time, they can't commit those resources, they just don't see any benefit to it, because they know in their heart of hearts that what they're doing is not serious, it's not genuine, and they don't really have any aspirations to take things further than what they're doing, which is, you know, a Twitter account or a Discord server 90% of the time. What's the Stomarian Imperial motorcade look like? I'm going to plead my ignorance. It's either I don't know, motorcade. You're gonna have to tell me what that is. I'm not gonna Google it now. Just tell me what it is, and then I'll answer that. I'm gonna feel stupid now. It's not like a what car I drive or something. Is that what you're trying to say? I don't know. The Republic of Ethan Stern said, I'm inspired by Southwood and I'm trying to make a province like that. I've started a small potato farm. Do you have any advice to make province like Southwood? Again, I think this is largely what I just touched on a moment ago. Potatoes is definitely a good way forward. In fact, potatoes was it the first thing we ever planted? I think it was. I think potatoes was the first thing we ever planted. Last year, in 2023, we planted about 24 different herbs, vegetables, and all the rest of it to see what was going to grow and what wasn't, which is why we eventually reviewed what we had grown at Southwood last year and decided that rhubarb was going to be the way forward, which is why all of our plots now, or all of our raised beds, are rhubarb, because it was so successful last year, and also has a lot of other benefits given the location compared to where I actually reside, which I'm not going to get into here, but the point is we did a lot of trial and error to find out what exactly we were going to grow there long term, and rhubarb was the one that we decided to settle on. So in terms of if we have any advice on making a province like Southwood, again, it depends what you want to do. If you're going to go to root potatoes, the one thing I'd say is that we were successful. We did grow potatoes there, but it would have been more successful in full sun. You can grow potatoes in the woodlands. You can grow virtually anything in the woodlands. We've proven that time and time again. But if you're going to grow something in the woods, think about more carefully in terms of what you might consider growing. And so berries seem to be something that grows quite well in the woods. But again, I don't know where you are. I don't know where you reside. So it could be different where you are. Again, I would love to give you more advice, but I really just don't know where to start, because I don't know where you live. I don't know what the land consists of. I don't know what your intentions are for it. So it's a bit tricky for me. But if you have seen a lot of our content, a lot of our progress reports for Southwood, I mean, that's probably the best thing I can suggest, is just go onto our playlists, progress reports. I think they're probably all Southwood. And you can see step by step up to a point where we've turned Southwood from what it was into what it is. And then hopefully you can just pull as much information of that as that will be relevant to you. Jenna the Hacker says, wait, if we are Micronations, then how do we get legally recognised so we can legally become a Micronation? Or do we need to? And again, Jenna, I would definitely recommend going back and watching this live, because I have talked about all of this in some detail before. I know this live's been going on for some time. Where are we now? Nearly 2 hours by the looks of it. But I would definitely go back and research what I've discussed already, because for the purpose of benefit of everyone else here, I'm not going to keep going over the same things. I'm going to join UN. Yep, okay, fine. Republic of Slovakia says, no, we don't need legal recognition, but us Slovakians want it because we think it would be epic. And it is a goal we are trying to achieve. It's good to set goals, but no legal recognition is needed. Correct. Sovereign says, as a citizen of Svenland, we love Stomaria. We think they are doing a great nation, highly spoken of. It depends on what circles you're mixing, I suppose. I think Stomaria is, trying to think the right word here, maybe a Marmite nation. You either love us or you hate us. But the bottom line is we are what we are, and we are accomplishing far more than most will ever do. So those that hate us normally do so from a different place, I suppose. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but yeah, we are highly spoken of and highly thought of in many circles, but there are some circles which can't stand us, and that's fine. But yeah, we're not universally loved, and I think that's something that I've always considered to be a hallmark of being on the right track. If you are universally loved, if everyone is thinks you're fantastic, whatever else, then I can only think that you don't actually stand for anything meaningful. Because if you stand for something meaningful, then there's people out there that will oppose you, they'll deride you, they'll try to defame you, or whatever else. And if you are opinionated in what you believe in, if you strongly advocate for what you believe in, then you will rub people up the wrong way. And I'm not ashamed to say that we can do exactly that, because what we believe in does occasionally rub people up the wrong way. The way we present ourselves, the way we go about ourselves, our refusal to be bullied or intimidated or go quietly. These are things that people in some circles can't stand. And it's just one more reason for us to keep pushing on, because nothing is more petty, I think, than succeeding while we're watching you, waiting for you to fail, waiting for you to pack it in and declare own little victories. And you just keep coming back over and over again with more news, more updates, more progress. And This is something that I have discussed with King Raoul in the past. One of the most driving forces within Stomaria, the more core elements of my being is just going out there and showing people who say it can't be done that it is being done. That not only is being done, we have done it, and we are doing it on ever larger scales. Again, I'm probably going to make a video about this at some point in the future, about the people who thought we couldn't do it, people who constantly say we can't do it, and the people that are constantly waiting for us to fail, but unfortunately for them, keep coming back to find out that we've made more progress. Weird tangent, I don't know where we went on that. Oh yeah, someone said that we were very highly thought of. Yeah, thank you, Sobrik. I appreciate that you're one of the circles that does find Stomaria to be of interest. Mewtwo Knight, do you think it's too dangerous to go live somewhere far in Russia to claim a territory? Yes, absolutely. Do not move to Russia to claim territory in Russia, or any of their proxy breakaway states for that matter. For those who know, they know. Yeah, no, simple answer to a straightforward question. Do not go and claim land in Russia or any autocratic regimes which have a nasty tendency of murdering political opponents or whatever else. Janet the Hacker says you should rent or buy some land. Yep, we have bought some. Mewtwo Knight, yeah, buy it for sure. Yep. Janet the Hacker says you might not want to mess with Russia. Agreed. Mewtwo Knight says I think so. Yep, that's fine. Janet the Hacker, for citizenship, should I use Google Forms to make an application? Nice outfit. You mean my suit? I presume you mean my suit, or are you looking at a picture of me in one of my more formal attire? Don't know. But, or maybe you're talking to someone else in the chat. Anyway, yeah. In terms of using Google Forms, can do. I never have. I don't really see any benefit to it. I just get people to, but that's probably because I'm a bit more informal when it comes to this sort of process. If people want to join Stomaria, I just need to know them. I need to know who they are and to get to know them on a personal level. These days, it's a lot more straightforward. They just join through PayPal or whatever else, and they join as a citizen that way. But if they want to get more involved, I just need to find out more about them on a more one-to-one level through an informal interview process or informal chat. Having something more formal in place, like a Google form, can be good, but then you have to rely on people actually filling that out honestly, filling it out correctly, and not just, saying what they think you want to hear. There's only two ways we ever recruited citizens, and that's through a face-to-face interview where I've actually had that interaction either through a video call or through face-to-face meeting, or they've contributed financially, both of which is both ways in which is going to either reinforce my belief that they're going to stick around, or they've contributed to Stomaria, so therefore they're worth something to me in that sense. But when it comes to Google Forms, just by itself doesn't really mean anything in my opinion. Ladonia says, we were founded in Hong Kong after the protest to preserve democracy, but due to safety reasons, we never had an internet presence until 2022, when most of the government moved to an island in Canada. Probably a safe bet. Again, like Russia, or Syria, or China, or North Korea, or whatever else, maybe don't set up these sorts of things, because we are quite blessed in the Western world in particular to have the opportunity to actually establish these in a place of relative safety and security. But if you are in other parts of the world, it's really just not worth the hassle. And I say hassle, I'm actually meaning that it's not worth the prison terms or acts of sedition that will be leveled against you or whatever else. But just if it's an autocratic regime you're residing in, I wouldn't go down this route at all. I would definitely, personally, I would move to somewhere where you could do it, but I would just move there for other reasons beyond that, if at all possible. Who here is in the country fighting for human rights and animal rights? We are. Slovakia says, and the cars are always the same. And the cars are always the same. Sorry, if I missed something. I'm not sure what that's about. Jenna the Hacker says, yes, I'm going to make it law, so one car, a family, if you want to, then a Tesla or something. Okay. Soverick says, you got to pay now and look after their plans, how expensive. I'm not even sure. What is this about? I feel like I've missed a part of this conversation. Soverick says, you got to pay... no, sorry, Miss already said that. Ethan Stan says, thank you, no problem. Jenna the Hacker says, for what? Okay, for what? Well, I think I'm going to skip over this car conversation because I'm not quite sure what it's talking about. Ubers? Buy a big one? I don't know what they're talking about. Jenna the Hacker says, has Stomaria won a YouTube award, like a play button? I'm not sure what a YouTube award is or a play button, to be honest. We are monetized. We got what do you call it? Super chats and things like that, if that's what you're talking about. In fact, there's a super chat down there. You can try it out if you like. I'm joking, obviously. You don't need to use the super chat. We did actually have confirmation in the last live we did that it actually works, so that was encouraging. Here we got. Ethan Sands said, I meant thank you, dedicated to the advice from the Emperor Andrew gave. Yep. Car. Guardian 1326. This is the very individual that actually tried out the super chat in the last live that we did, and I'm very appreciative of that because not only were they the first ever to actually contribute to Stomaria financially through that means, but they actually confirmed for me that it was available and it was working. So thank you again. Now, they say that my son and I are in the process of creating our micronation. We've decided on a constitutional monarchy as our form of government. We're writing our constitution and would value your input on it. I have discussed this in the live regarding a constitution. We don't use a constitution. We don't think it's necessary to do so because we're not a constitutional monarchy. We're an absolute monarchy. What I say goes, because ultimately Stomaria is the nation that I founded. It consists of property and assets that I've invested into Stomaria. This imperial family itself makes up some 96-97% probably now of the funds that have been put into Stomaria. There's no chance that I'm going to deliberately limit my own ability to govern my own land or to maintain what I'm trying to do here, or slow down the development of Stomaria because I have to rely on people who are less committed or less involved than myself. So ultimately, we are an absolute monarchy, not a constitutional monarchy, so I'm afraid I can't give any advice when it comes to writing a constitution because I've never had the need to do so. But all the same, it is very good to see you here, and I'm glad that you are taking steps on trying to build something. I think it is nice that you and your son are doing this together. I think that's a very nice activity for you to get involved with. I obviously have little Princess Elena. She's 3 going on 4 in June. And she's, if anyone's watched any of our content, you see that she is getting gradually more involved in the development of Stomaria in some form or another. In fact, she is actually, for those that don't know, technically the governor of Southwood. Technically, she is the formal governor of that territory, of that province. And in the last progress report, I actually highlighted that, and she was there. She was, raking out the soil. She was planting the strawberries. She was doing her bit. So, fair's fair. But it is nice to get the kids involved, I think. So yeah, my hat off to you for that. More car stuff. Car. Car. Yeah, okay, so this was leading back to what Slovakia said earlier about a motorcade is a group of cars that transport important politician. I have a company car, so my car changes quite frequently. I used to have a Skoda, I have a Renault at the moment, and then I think I'm going to have a Mazda in August, and that probably change again soon after that. So that I drive whatever I'm given in a private capacity. I'm not fussed about cars at all. I'm not a car guy. I'm not a motorhead. I'm not a gearhead, or whatever they even call themselves. I just need a vehicle to get me from A to B, and then I can do what I need to do there. I'm not fussed about buying flashy cars or flashy anything really. I'm all about that land acquisition, the utilization of that land, and that's where I put my time, resources, and efforts. I don't have any concern or care for cars, as long as it functions, has an engine, 4 wheels, and gets me to where I need to go. A royal carriage, yep. I don't think that's going to be necessary. Where did the money to buy, this is from Slovakia, where did the money to buy the land for Stomaria come from, Your Imperial Majesty? From the imperial family, from us. It was purchased directly out of my own pocket, which again is why we're not a constitutional monarchy, it's why we're not a democracy, it's why I don't need or require or desire the input from people outside my immediate circle as to how we utilise that land. I don't like to get handicapped in what I can and cannot do with the places that I buy, with the territory that we acquire, and all that jazz. So again, that's why we're an absolute monarchy. That's why I value. But this is where the absolute monarchism and libertarianism kind of blend together quite well. And I have touched on this earlier in this video, but they kind of lead to the same path when we're talking about this sort of thing. From an absolute monarchy perspective, I purchase land, it's my land, so I will do what I want with that land. No one will tell me how to go about utilising that land, and so on and so forth. Absolute monarchy. From a libertarian perspective, from an individual rights and natural rights point of view, in terms of the right to private land, the right to land, or the right to property, or freedom of speech, and all the rest of it, that feeds in from this other direction and comes together. This is where libertarianism and absolute monarchism, from our own perspective, and the practical utilization of what we're trying to do, this is where it all comes together. Even though in the larger, wider world, libertarianism and absolute monarchism are not exactly something that you would naturally put together, but in our case, it is, which is why things get a little bit confusing from time to time. Jenna the Heck says, do I make a funding app or go door to door asking? About what? For funding your nation? I mean, you can go door to door if you want. I don't think it'd be terribly successful. But you just need to be able to, before you think about money, you need to think about people. People aren't going to contribute money to you if they don't know who you are or what you are and all the rest of it. You need to give people a reason to actually get involved in what you're doing. If you just go door to door and say, hello, I'm collecting money for my nation, they won't have any idea what you're talking about. So you need to, first of all, build up the network, build up the community, build up the reputation, and then if you get to that point, you can start to ask your supporters, ask your citizens, ask the people who are interested in your community and your project to contribute financially. And there's not really a secret to it on that front. It's pretty common sense stuff, I suppose. People aren't going to contribute to something they don't know what it is. If people don't know what you're doing, they're not going to give money to it. You need to build up a reputation, you need to build up a rapport, you need to build up some kind of notoriety in the best possible way, and then people will naturally want to contribute financially to you if they like what you are doing, which again is why people do contribute financially to Stomaria today, whereas 5 years ago they wouldn't have done, because we were just, 17 followers on a Facebook page, and me and my wife with a flag in the corner of my living room. What's to contribute towards? But yeah. Guardian 1326 has once again used the super chat. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you very much, Guardian 1326. I don't think I actually know your name, and that's absolutely fine. But it's a pleasure to talk with you as well, because you have not just comment on the lives and the rest of it. You also comment on our YouTube videos elsewhere, even from years past, and it's good to see that you're taking an interest in how we've done it, the mistakes that we've made, and maybe some of the successes that we've had. And ultimately, I think you're not alone in extracting value from Stomaria in that sense. We are very much like a canary in the gold mines for a lot of aspirant nations and a lot of aspirant communities, because we've been around for a long time, comparatively speaking, and we're not shy about wearing everything that we've done on our sleeves. We can show people what we've done. We can show people how we've evolved, how we've changed, why we've refined it the way we have. And I think it just goes to a lot to, well, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, but it's very encouraging for me to be able to know that we have added some value to what you were trying to do and what other people are trying to do in a similar vein. Jenna the Hacker, the fact we watched this for 2 hours again, I'm not sure what this is referencing. The fact that we watched this for 2 hours. Okay. Slovakia says, anyways, good night, fellow presidents, sultans, emperors, like His Imperial Majesty Andrew, prime ministers, dictators, and citizens. Have a good evening, or good morning, or good day, wherever you may be. John Heck says, have a good one. Ethan says, bye, Slovakia. Yeah, super, perfect. All right. Well, I've covered pretty much everything that I want to cover, and I think I've caught up with largely everything in the chat. And we have been going, where are we now? Over 2 hours. I think this is probably the longest live stream we've ever done. So what I'm going to do, because I think we are having some people drop out. We still have like, what is it, 8, 9, 10 viewers or whatever else. But I'm just going to take a minute. So I'm going to drink my coffee and just let any other last minute questions or queries come in. Because in the next 10, 15, 20 minutes or so, I am going to have to get going because it is already 11 o'clock, gone 11 o'clock at night at the moment, and I do have work that I need to get up for in a few hours' time. So any other final questions or queries, please jump in now. Now, forgive me while I'm waiting for that, if I do a little bit of admin here, because I have a few emails. I'm sorry for those who have just joined and are just watching me play around with my laptop and drink coffee. Any more questions or queries? Fire them in the chat. I'll get to you in just a minute. Jenna Hacker says, does Stomaria have a police force? Not in the conventional sense, no. We have the Imperial Guard, which is a policing and security body, but it's not something that we've really developed on a serious scale. We have a few uniforms involved, we have sabers involved, it's all properly done. It's all, military grade uniforms, they're all lethal, genuine sabers, and all that jazz. But because Stomaria hasn't gotten to a point where we require stewards for public events on any major scale, which is effectively what the Imperial Guard is going to be used for, there's not been really any need to develop it to the way we have. And because fully equipping a member of the Imperial Guard costs somewhere in the region of, what is it, must be £400 or £500, I suppose. There's not really a real motivation to invest that kind of funding into equipping someone with the attire and equipment of the Imperial Guard if we're just not going to be using them. Adding into the fact that Stomaria has quite a unique problem in that a sizable minority of people that identify as citizens of Stomaria are not resident in the British Isles, and those that are so far away from Stomarian territory. In fact, I am, I think, the closest Stomarian citizen to Southwood, as far as I know, and I'm an hour and 15 minutes away. So you can sort of, extract from that what you need to when I say that the people that might want to become members of the Imperial Guard and act as stewards for public events might not be in a position to be able to actually fulfill that role. So with a lack of people in close proximity to the land, with a lack of Stomarian citizens that will have the interest in becoming members of the Imperial Guard, because they might be involved in Stomaria for other reasons, not just to join the Imperial Guard and get a uniform and a saber, and the fact that it takes up so much in the way of financial resources to actually equip them, there's not really a motivation to develop it more than we already have, which is just to basically establish a framework in which we can expand it as and when we want to. So I think the short answer is no, we don't have a police force, but we do have basically a stewarding body that's going to be developed going forward as and when it requires. Guardian1326 says, "My name is David." Well, hello, David. If you don't mind, I'll refer to you as David going forward. Feels a bit more personal, and since you have contributed quite significantly, comparatively speaking, I suppose, to Stomaria through our YouTube lives, um, I would like to refer to you as David if that's all right with you. Someone else has jumped into the chat. A Kapira, hello, sir. I am tired of my country and seek to make a better one. Okay, good. Baby steps, but I'm glad you're taking the initiative and trying to establish something for yourself, your family, your community, your loved ones, your friends, whatever it may be. That is ultimately where it starts, and if it becomes more successful than that, then so much the better. Sven then says, we have sincerely enjoyed this opportunity to ask you questions. We look forward to the potential of discussing diplomatic missions. We will definitely see. I will have a look at the application that you sent, the request for diplomatic relations. This is something that I will have to obviously discuss with members of the Imperial Court. If it does go ahead, we will require things like video calls and things like that, or face-to-face meetings. So again, just be aware that this is the kind of process that we have for those that want to become affiliated with us in any capacity, either as external trade partners or as member states of the Empire. So they all kind of fall under the same umbrella. If you want relations with Stomaria, we need to know who you are. So just be prepared for that. But yeah, otherwise, I will very much look forward to discussing this in the coming days. A Kapira says, did you want to make a better country also? I mean, yes. I mean, when it comes to nation building and civilization building, that's always been something that I have had a long interest for many, many decades. If you go back to the history of Stomaria, you can arguably link it back to the early 2000s when I was, a child in my parents' back garden with my siblings and friends, building forts and establishing an agrarian economy, building chariots and having battles and all that stuff, sort of thing. We never defined it as a micronation, and that kind of activity isn't directly associated with Stomaria as it stands today. But that is to say, I've always been interested in building, creating, and all the rest of it. And this desire to establish a society which matches the morals and the values and the objectives and the aspirations that are important to me, it's a natural fit for me. And at the end of the day, even if you took away the flag, even if you took away the pomp and the ceremony of what we are, ultimately at the end of the day, we're buying land, we're growing food, we're providing our own energy, we're supplying our own water. It doesn't really matter what label you stick onto it or attach to it. It is something that is going to be bringing real world tangible benefit to me and my family and the community around me. And so even if it wasn't a case of Stomaria was doing this, even if it wasn't a case of the Empire or me as the Emperor doing this, I would more than likely still be doing this in a personal, private capacity, because ultimately that's what I like to do. I like to provide for myself and for those around me. And Stomaria is an ample there's ample opportunity within Stomaria to do that on a grander scale, and that's ultimately what we are doing. Godwin BX says, do you, since you created your own country, have any advice to make a country for my book? More than I can give here, but what I would recommend doing is we have a playlist called How to Start a Nation on our YouTube channel. I would recommend going onto that playlist and just going through what we have discussed there, because that will ultimately cover far more than what I can describe in the next 5 minutes. So please go and review that if that is something that you want. If you want to hear my genuine thoughts on how to go about starting a nation, that is the best place to do that. Listen to people fluently. Okay. Jan Hacker says, we'll listen to the people so they won't leave, like sort out problems out, for example, like, and inspect it, or hold votes to get new government every 4 years, for example. I mean, okay, but I don't think people are going to join on that basis, because a lot of people already have that where they are. So I'm not too sure that, I mean, again, people won't give you money just for that. If that's what you're leaning towards, based on your previous comments. It doesn't mean anything to anyone. So you've got to really give them something tangible, or actually show them what you're actually trying to build. Zvank said, what is your favourite Macronation? I'm not really sure, if I'm brutally honest. I can't, I've never really been asked that question before. In terms of like architecture or beauty and all the rest of it, I've always liked Austria, for instance, but in terms of like governmental systems, in terms of freedom indexes and the opportunity for economic development or anything like that, it's not really something I've ever really given any thought to. So I might have to skip over that question slightly and sidestep that question, because I don't want to say anything that's going to put me in hot water later on when I have a bit more of a think about it and go, actually, I prefer this Micronation, or this society or community is better, because it's not really something I've ever given any genuine thought to. So I'm afraid I have to leave that one. All right, last two, and then I've really got to go. So Jenna says, is Stomaria a group, or are they independent, or are they a republic? I'm not sure what the question is really. We are a group. We're not a republic, we're an empire. Apologies, but I'm not really sure what the question is about. So again, I'm afraid I'll have to skip over that one. Oh, okay. So alright, for the record, Svenland is the last one I'm going to answer. I've got one more before this, and then Svenland's the last one. Alright. Godwin BX. Also, I do... Oh dear. I'm assuming this is just vexiology, so they call it vexiolographing? Vexiolographing? I really shouldn't do lives. And I love your flag design. Did you design it? I did design it, yes. I spent a lot of time painstakingly designing the flag of Stomaria. There was a lot of back and forth. I wanted something that was going to be recognisable, easily replicated, but straightforward. I wanted something that looked like it wouldn't be out of place where it used in ancient societies, but also wouldn't look out of place in amongst modern societies. I wanted something where the ratios were relative to one another, so the central band is exactly twice the size of the two outer bands. The colour blue and white is a lovely contrast. The depth of the blue, in terms of the shade of blue, is I think where it needs to be, in terms of you didn't want anything too light because it would get lost in the white, and it would also look a bit less intimidating is the wrong word, but I like the stronger blue to convey strength. So anyway, but again, on our website and in our YouTube videos, the How to Start a Nation series, I discuss the flag aspect of it and have a breakdown, and we even have a photo, like a chart, covering everything to do with the flag. So go do have a look at that, because the flag design is something that we are very proud of. And so then the last question. So my last question is, why did you create Stomaria and decide to expand it, and what made you discover the idea? Do you like similar topics? So this is going to be quite a long-winded last question, I suppose, a long answer to the question, I suppose. So why did you create Stomaria? So as I alluded to earlier, I'm always been interested in nation building. The actual foundation of Stomaria goes back to an RTS game called Empire Earth, which a lot of younger people probably won't be familiar with, but it's as I say, it's an RTS game. It's a civilization building game, and I played this when I was like 10 or 11, I think, maybe 12. And we would take all this civilization creation, this nation building. So you would collect resources, you would build cities, you would conquer enemies, you would engage in diplomacy or whatever else. All of these different aspects of the civilization building game, and we would take all that and we would apply that to the real world. So we would go out and we will build forts, we would establish agrarian economies, we would collect resources, we would invite our friends over, and they would become citizens, and they would be recruited into these militia armies, and we would have these battles, and some of them were quite epic, involving maybe 12, 15 people. I think the largest one we ever had. It was really something, because we made all these weapons and things like that. And the thing is, what back then we never, I didn't know what micronation was. I never heard of a micronation before. We were just, doing what children do. And I think one of the problems these days is micronations typically exist in that form, but because the internet exists in a far more widespread capacity in terms of YouTube and social media, lots of social media and everything that can advertise that. That's kind of what micronationalism is these days. I would never have defined it as a micronation when I was a kid, but that's ultimately where it started. And then it was a case of I was walking into town with my now wife one random night. It must have been like 2018, I guess, and we were walking into town for dinner. And we were talking about our childhoods, and I mentioned this about what we used to do about building forts and having our own economies and all the rest of it. And she made a one off-the-cuff remark saying, "Wouldn't it be so cool if we could do something like that now?" And just like that, it was game on. I was like, "Well, why can't I? I still have all that interest, but now I have the resources and the time and the capacity to actually take it to the next level." And so I spent maybe 6 or 9 months sort of developing Stomaria behind the scenes. We've never advertised it or anything like that, never published anything online. And I thought, well, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? What do I want to achieve? And sort of outlined all of these different values and aspirations that I had as an individual, and what I would like for people around me to actually be able to get on board with. And so Stomaria was ultimately born through this means, by this desire to build, to create, and the renewed interest later in my life to actually pursue that, about trying to not even change the world, just change my corner of the world. And I think that's where it differs from like politics or political parties, for instance, where you're actively trying to encourage people to vote or behave a certain way so you can implement policies that affects everyone, whereas what we're doing is just based on voluntary association, voluntary affiliation. So what we do doesn't have any impact on wider society, but what we do does have an impact on our own lives, and that's ultimately what I wanted to do. And so that's why Stomaria was founded ultimately as it was. In terms of like micronations and micronationalism, I never really I didn't delve into that until much later, towards the launch of Stomaria, when I realised that there were other entities and groups that define themselves as micronations. But micronations, by and large, are, if nothing else, a good lesson in what not to do. I learned far more about what not to do from micronations than what to do. So when I looked at using cookie dough as currency, when I looked at using little bits of paper as currency, when I looked at people declaring war and sanctions and embargoes on one another, when I looked at all the god-awful flag designs that a lot of these micronations were touting about, when I came across all these extremist ideologies that were being promoted, when I came across all these micronations that changed the government structure or the ideology or the driving purpose of their micronation every other day, and I came across all of these 12 and 13-year-olds getting into spats on Twitter or Discord or Reddit or whatever else. When I got into, I mean, the list can go on and on and on and on, that micronations by and large can teach you what not to do. And so I object to the using the term micronation, but I would definitely recommend people look at micronations, because it gives you a very good idea of why you should maybe give that kind of community a wide berth and focus on building something that's what we would define as a nation building project, as opposed to a micronation. But anyway, that by the by, I hope that answers your question. But I think that will have to be the last thing I discuss here. Have a good evening. My history is very similar. Stories like, yeah, okay, good night everyone, been awesome. All right, fantastic. Right, we're all caught up. I think we're going to leave it there. It has been great. I have enjoyed this experience. It's probably actually been one of the best, most interactive lives that we've had so far. So hopefully that train will keep on going. So I'm going to leave it there. It was fantastic chatting with everyone. Now, if you wanted to get involved in Stomaria, you can become a citizen through the links in the description below. Just go onto our website if not, and just find out how to become a citizen through that. If you don't want to become a citizen, that's fine. Just give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will catch you in the next one.